Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, a show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I'm a clinical psychologist in private practice. I am also the parent of a couple of ADHD kids, one of each, an inattentive type and a hyperactive type. And I'm married into a whole family of ADHDers. And I have been working with ADHD for more than 40 years, let's just put it that way. And I have had some ups and some downs with that whole procedure. And I've also worked with a lot of people, parents and adults with ADHD through their ups and downs. And this show is trying to make it a little bit easier for everybody. And that was my audio engineer saying we have good audio, so we will continue on. Okay, last week we were talking about some of the clues, maybe some of the ways of thinking and doing that I have kind of come across over the years that make parenting an ADHD child easier. I am never going to tell you that it's easy. Nobody who's been through it will tell you that. But there are things you can do, adjustments you can make that will make life easier. Now, if you don't remember last week, we talked about the importance of a good evaluation. You need to understand that most every medical provider will recommend medication for your child. You have to be boned up on that and know what you're talking about and read some of the research. You have to accept that ADHD is a neurologic condition and that therefore punishment is not really effective. You're punishing somebody for limping, sort of that kind of model. And you have to look at yourself and your spouse and know, what kind of problems do you have with this particular situation? Because it ain't easy. I know that. But there are some things, personality traits, that sort of thing, that make it harder. And some, and everything. Basically, we're all just a whole pile of moving, learned behaviors. And so it's not impossible for us to change. And we need to accept that and know that. And then there's the whole marriage and family. What kind of situation is your marriage in? Are you divorced? Are you having troubles getting ready to divorce? Are you separated and taking care of all the kids by yourself? Those kinds of things. You have to match those in. But now starting the new stuff. And that's all in the last session a week ago. So now we're going to talk about, first of all, rule number six. Don't play the blame game, okay? We are all trained to be critical. Every one of us, we are trained to be critical. Our parents teach us how we're supposed to behave, how we're supposed to brush our teeth. They teach us how to go to the bathroom. They teach us what their rules are. And in school, it's the same thing, You get all the answers right. Yeah, okay, fine. That's good. That's really good. Yeah. And then, but we spend most of our time, well, why'd you get this wrong? What'd you do? Why, how come you, and even in sports and that sort of thing, why did you drop that ball? You got to keep your eye on it, all that sort of stuff. We are trained to be critical. We pay attention to it. And it was important back in the days when we were wandering through the jungle with the saber-toothed tigers and stuff like that. You had to remember where the danger was. And so that's why critical thinking is so important. The problem is that, like I keep saying every week, an ADHD kid gets 70 critical responses every single day. And it may be higher than that, honestly. We need to, not everything that goes wrong in a system, and a family is a system, not everything that goes wrong is somebody's fault. Can be a lot of other reasons. Can be a lousy procedure. You need to look at that. Can be, just an accident. Stuff happens sometimes, things happen. Sometimes the handle is loose on the drawer and it comes off in somebody's hand. It's not that they were so ham-handed and jerked it out of the wall. All these things. And what is the point of blaming people for everything, you know? In my personal experience, both in the military, as a psychologist, as a private practitioner, as a family therapist, a marital therapist, you know, all those things. Most of the time, the situation gets bad, not because a mistake was made or not because, you know, something happened, but the view we take of it, somebody's got to be at fault. Somebody, you know, I didn't do it, so you must have. That kind of thing. And that really makes for a lousy environment in a family, in a marriage, in a parent-child relationship. Sometimes stuff just happens. And what is the point of having to blame somebody for it? Oh, it's your fault, you know. And you know ADHD kids, you know, if you've got one in your house, if things go wrong, your first thought is, oh, I bet he did it, you know. And that's just one of those things all of us ADHD parents have to watch out for, because we are just human after all, and we will have a tendency to do that. So that's one of those things you have to catch. You have to be self-aware, and you have to, you know, whoa, wait a minute, maybe it's nobody's fault. Or maybe I should have a different way of doing those things so that we don't have so much individual responsibility on this person. That's an important, and it's very tricky, and you will never get it exactly right, but you can do better. Okay. And so you've got to first recognize that you can, and then recognize you've got to catch yourself. You know, you've got to be more aware of the way you think about things and more aware of your behavior. You can't just go with your natural impulses, because they may not be right in this situation. As a matter of fact, they may be real wrong. Okay, and then the seventh thing is know some of the natural ways to increase dopamine. Okay, now dopamine is what's called a neurotransmitter. It's the way your nerves communicate with each other. Okay, when the signal is within the nerve, you know, have you seen the picture with the long, looks like a piece of wire or something? As long as the signal's in there, it's electrical. But when it comes to another neuron, like so, and the signal wants to go from here to here, in that little space, that's where the neurotransmitters are. And the one that's sending the signal, which would be this one, is sending the signal to this one to pick up. So the dopamine goes across that little cleft and gets absorbed on the other side. And that's how the signal, and this happens miraculously fast. And we have pretty good information, a lot of research this suggesting that ADHD is mostly about having really low dopamine compared to a neurotypical kid. That and it's not sure whether it's just being produced at a lower level or if it's being metabolized faster. Don't know. No way of really telling. Doesn't matter that much. But okay, and that's basically how stimulant medication works. Is it increases the dopamine levels in the entire nervous system. So what you've got to do is recognize that a lot of the behavior stuff is when the dopamine is low. Okay. And so it's nice to know what some of the things that naturally increase dopamine. And the first one, and the biggie, is exercise. We have several people, several well-known authors, who use exercise totally as the way they control their ADHD. Oh God, he wrote Charge. I don't know what the heck, I've forgotten his name right now, but basically he's at Harvard Medical School, and he claims that a 45-minute run holds him for the whole day, and he's good to go and do his research and treat patients and all that stuff for a whole day based on that run. Maybe, but it does definitely increase dopamine. So you want your child off of his iPhone or iPad or whatever he's got, and out there getting some exercise. Sports, Mark Phelps is probably one of the better known examples of ADHDers with who've used exercise successfully to help their ADHD. You get a hard workout in, your body's pumping dopamine like crazy, your mind is sharper, you focus better, you have better control of your emotions and all those good things. Okay, another thing, high protein diet. Okay, those of you who maybe have problems with blood sugar spiking, if you eat even a little bit of sugar, know that a high sugar diet is lousy. And if you've watched your kid, your ADHD child, and if you feed them a lot of sugar, you'll get a call from the teacher before the morning is over. Like if you fill them full of Captain Crunch and just a lot of jelly or whatever, they aren't going to make the morning. They need high protein. Okay, high protein. ADHD, I mean, lots of people have hypoglycemia, but hyperglycemia rather, but most people can learn to control it. It's basically don't feed yourself high sugar things. You like donuts? That's great. Matter of fact, donuts have got enough fat that they probably aren't as bad for you. But if you're doing one of these sugar-coated cereals, say, in the morning, that's likely to not be a good thing. That lowers dopamine rather than increasing it. Another thing is they have to get enough sleep. Okay, sleep is real important. And not everything to increase dopamine has to be high exercise, high work. Petting a dog, listening to music, and something that's pleasant, it tends to increase your dopamine. So it's not all hard work. Okay, next thing is the thing that scares most people. Come to think of it, it scared me at first. Temper tantrums. Okay. First thing you've got to do is be aware when your ADHD child is throwing a tantrum. Be aware of your awfulizing thoughts. Now, me, back in those days, I was just a boy psychologist. And I'd worked in back wards, inpatient units, that sort of stuff. I'd seen a lot of really bad kinds of psychiatric illnesses, so I've seen bipolars and schizophrenics and, just the whole DSM book of diagnoses. So this kid has got a temper tantrums. He's rolling around on the floor, kicking his feet, stomping. And I mean, he's out of control. And, I'm going, God, is this a manic episode? What are we, I had way too much experience with a lot of things to deal with this calmly, but you have to. Okay. The first thing in any situation with your ADHD child is you. Are you able to stay calm? If you're the one if you're the spouse that freaks out all the time, let your partner handle the temper tantrums. You'll just make it worse. Okay. Because the last thing you need when the kid is having a temper tantrum is another parent who's having a more adult version of a temper tantrum. Doesn't work, doesn't improve anything, and it makes for a hard day. Okay, so your first rule is just to stay calm. Second rule is don't be too logical, because it's not about logic, and it's not about what the problem is and that sort of thing. And we all tend to want to have an adult discussion with our child who's having a temper tantrum, which is about at the age of 3 or so, as far as his or her, your kids are about 3 years behind their peers in terms of emotional development. So most things are not going to be solved by a logical argument or a logical discussion. You just have to soothe them, calm them down, get them going. And you don't have to be too nice, okay? Now, you have to set some limits, and, it doesn't mean don't, for gosh sakes, buy them out of having a tantrum unless you want to see a big increase in your temper tantrums. It's a, when you're out and if you're out, and about, in a store or something and your kid's having a temper tantrum, that's embarrassing. And you're going to want to try to keep it as quiet as you can and get it over with and all that other stuff. But sometimes you just can't do it. But I know I tried a temper tantrum with my mother once. And I'm in the store, and another kid we were with, he wanted something, I don't know, a toy or a candy bar or something, and he threw a 50 fit and his mother bought him it. So being a keen observer of the human condition, I tried the same thing. And the next thing I know, I'm standing out on the sidewalk wondering what happened. How'd I get here? Sometimes a change of situation is the fastest solution to one of these temper tantrum things. But you don't want to apologize to everybody in the room, and you don't want to spend a lot of time catering to a temper tantrum. You deal with it in an adult manner, and isolate is the first rule, I think. And then we go to what is the biggest skill you can give your child who has ADHD? And that is what is lovingly called resilience. Okay, if you're an ADHD person, you are going to make mistakes. You are going to screw up. You're going to forget stuff, all that sort of thing. And so, but you can't let that slow you down. You can't let that make you want to quit. You've got to be able to get up, dust yourself off, and try again. And that's the most important thing you can train your child to do. And it's more not why did you do that? It's, okay, this didn't work out very well. What can we learn? What can we do better? How can we do it better next time? You get them starting to think like that. That's resilience. Now, resilience is being able to screw up, wake up, learn something from it, go back and try it again, only do better. There are books 300 or 400 pages long, but basically that's the core of it, is that you learn from your mistakes and you get better as a result. And if you can train that into your child, they will love you forever, and they will be way more likely to be able to be successful. It's actually more important for success than intelligence. Intelligence is good to a point, but there are a lot of very bright people working in research labs that aren't making do for money, and there are a lot more people who are resilient, maybe not so bright, are book smart at least, that are doing very well, making really good livings, having successful lives, building stuff, helping society, boom, boom, boom. And it's all because they learned not to give up. They learned to learn from their mistakes. That's like I say, and that is a huge thing to train your child for. And then just the sort of an overall thing is, and it's harder with an ADHD child, but the number of positive interactions you have. And you can count them. It's a good idea to, as a matter of fact, if you're not sure, because most of us don't really pay that much attention. We survived that one. Let's keep going. But if you have some idea that, okay, we're awful critical in this family. We all are often prone to jump on everybody who makes mistakes in this family. And you can measure it. I mean, it doesn't take anything. A little 3x5 card, and you tick down every time you make a positive comment. Or if you want to get fancy, you can, count the positive comments with one kind of mark and an X, say, and a plus sign for the negative comments, or vice versa. It doesn't matter, but just pick a symbol so that at the end of the day you can see, how am I doing? How am I, am I being real negative, or am I being balanced, or am I being real positive? Because you can go to extremes with either one. You can be entirely too possible, then you fall into the helicopter parent category, or you can be too negative, and then you're the drill sergeant, kind of category. So it's important. It's important to know, because people are surprised. I remember I had one guy in a stress management program, and his blood pressure was screaming. And he says, I don't understand it. I'm very calm. I never get angry. I don't understand. I said, I tell you what, for a week, you do what I just went saying. Every time you get angry, just make a tick mark, just keep track of it. And he came back the next week, and it was like, I didn't know I was so mad all the time. I got angry in traffic. I got angry when the light turned red. I got angry when I couldn't be first in line at the bank. I got angry when it took too long or what I thought was too long to get my meal at the restaurant. He was surprised. But he was a bright guy, He just wasn't very tuned into his emotions, and he just couldn't figure out how this blood pressure thing was happening to him when he was so calm. And I observed him for about 6-8 weeks. I can't remember exactly how long the program was. And I knew this was an angry man. You could tell. Okay, so that's it. Don't, just sit there in the corner and kind of go, oh, I'm not angry. I'm calm. Right? Actually measure it, and you'll be surprised. Okay, that's it for this week. Don't play the blame game. There are natural ways to increase dopamine. There are ways of dealing with temper tantrums. Your biggest gift to your child is resilience, an approach to resilience in living his or her life. And be aware of yourself in terms of how positive or negative your environment is. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and I think I misspoke last week, and I said I was going to change the time of the podcast, but I'm not. I'm keeping that the same, but I am going to change the time of Facebook and YouTube versions of things, and we'll do that next week, and it'll come up on I forgot, Tuesday or Thursday, and we'll publish it in the morning, but you can get it whatever time of day you want. Okay, we will catch you later. And my website is terrygingrassphd.com. And you can get into my coaching program if you want to on that. And there'll be some other things we're adding in the future. So catch you later.